Hey, man, it's time for another AI list. Let's get into the defenses this week. And for those of you watching, we're going to do this a little bit different this time. So instead of it being like a flat format, we're going to look at defenses, and some of it may be we think they're in the wrong place. Some of it may be, we think that the additions are going to mean more by the end of the season or less at the end of the season. And so it's going to be slightly more freeform than we've been doing. So, let's get into it here. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Okay.
Well, right off the top of your head, what stands out here? Give me one team. Please make it the Seahawks.
I don't know. Maybe, selfish. I'll start selfish.
Yeah.
I'll start with the Cowboys. I hope we're at B tier. I hope we are. I think we were a little bit maligned last year, but I think we gave up like 470, 60 yards points last year. So I think it's generous to be B. I kind of want to take it, but I also kind of feel like if we were just basing off trends, it would be like maybe they would start a little bit lower than that and work our way back up. It's like everyone knows we have the pieces, and we definitely need our offense to work for our defense to survive, as it turns out. But I don't know. The first one that jumped out was like, I wonder where they have Dallas, right? I'm selfish. I can't help it. But that was the first one that caught my eye. Was like, oh, B, that's generous. That's good. They're not just basing it off of our kind of like performance from last year. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I mean, you've got so many peak kind of players, like peaky kind of players. Deron Bland has the record for pick sixes, and Micah Parsons is Micah Parsons, and so on. But then I don't know, somehow it seems to land in the middle somehow. And I think last year is a bit of a rough example just because you had injuries on defense. Micah missed a significant portion of the year. I think both of your corners were down for portions of time. It's a bit rough.
As it is every year.
So I think B is just about right for you, just because you could fluctuate this year between topish of A and mid to low C. And I wouldn't be entirely surprised depending on any of those. And obviously, we're kind of assuming, we try to assume relative health, but we do know that people are going to go down. The other thing we're kind of assuming here, I imagine, is that Mike is going to get signed, right? He is going to play. He's not going to hold out or anything like that. That's a crazy situation to adjust. But yeah, I think you could be anywhere from top of A to middle to lower C, depending on just how they kind of roll out. But I don't hate where they have them.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you? What pops out to you?
Well, I'll be selfish in return. The Cardinals, I get where they are now. I get it. Last year, this is just about right. I know points per game, we were more like top of C tier kind of area. I was like 21st or something. But it didn't. If you're watching the games, it did not feel like that. It felt like that was a bit of a propped up number. Maybe just right things happening at the right time, or what. Our run game slowed the games down, and so the opposing teams didn't have tons of opportunities. But I do like the additions we've made. We attacked the probably biggest area of need on the defensive line, so I'm optimistic. And so I'll use this opportunity to move us. I think by the end of the season, we're more like maybe up close to you, behind whatever. I'll put you right.
Yeah, it works. Yeah.
And I think somewhere like that, I think by the end of the season, we will be a respectable. I think that we have the potential, if young players mature into what we're hoping they do, and if new players that we brought in can be productive, and our offense doesn't put our defense in a terrible position all the time, like we could climb even higher, but we're not about to challenge, Philadelphia and Denver and so on. So we'll see. But I do anticipate we'll be better this year. And I think that there's a little bit of optimism on where I put them just now, but I think it's semi-realistic to assume that we will climb a bit. So what have you thought of when I've rambled about the Cardinals from time to time? What's your summation of the
yeah. I mean, my thought with the Cardinals is that I do think that they've tried to fill the gaps that they've got on defense. I also think, though, that they'll get tested a little bit more this season, probably mainly from the 49ers, just as they have a healthy McCaffrey, theoretically, and all of that. It'll be interesting to see how that all shapes out. But, yeah, I think that they've made the right improvements, and they were, number 2 in points against in their division, something like that. I think last season. But I do think that those teams that they played against are going to score or be more effective offenses as well. So yeah, no, I think that they'll be right in here. It'll be interesting to see how they match up in their own division, but also around their general schedule. So yeah, I expect if they're below this, I would be shocked.
Yeah.
Let's see here. I'm curious about the Chargers. I'm actually really curious about your take on the Chargers. I think that they're in a tough division, and I know that they've got some changes and all of that going on. But I mean, last year they were number 1 in points against in the league. In a some might call their division a challenge. So I mean, do you think that they've been enough to bring them down to B from what statistically one might consider to be a high A, maybe low S from last year? Do you think that they should be down this far? Or do you think their defense is kind of maybe being underestimated here?
I get some of the hesitation, but their defense reminds me of certain elements of the Washington Commanders. Not of their defense per se, but in the sense that last year they were counting on some older players to play up really well.
Yeah.
Khalil Mack is still killing it at like 35 years old or something like that. He played incredibly well last year. Still one of the top outside linebacker edge guys in the league, I believe. They still had Joey Bosa last year, but in true Joey Bosa style, he really didn't play tons. Certainly didn't play the entire season. So the loss of him will be felt somewhat, but it's one of those situations where I trust the coach in certain elements. And I trust him to bring in guys that make sense for his team on both sides of the ball, to be honest. So I think B may be a bit of a stretch, but if I was going to move them, I don't know that it would be massive. But yeah, to the first point you were making, I think the AFC West may have 3 of the top 5 defenses in the NFL this year between Kansas, Denver, and LA. I don't think the Raiders defense will be terrible necessarily, but anyway, to come back to the Chargers. Yeah, I'd probably move them up a bit, like maybe the end of A tier, the top of B. So again, it's really not a massive. If you were to put numbers on all of these left to right and top to bottom, it's not a massive movement, but yeah, it's real. So yeah, if you want to do that, does that make sense to you? Where were you thinking?
Yeah, no, I mean you made a good point, which is that Denver, Kansas, and the Chargers are all really statistically good defenses, and I think you're probably right. It's a question of if you were just to rate them 1, 2, and 3. I think this is the right order, right? Denver top, Kansas, and then them. It's just funny when you compare them to a lot of other defenses out there. I think they're pretty darn good. I don't know. I don't know that I see them as below the Browns, but we'll see. We'll find out.
Yeah. Well,
what about you? What else pops out here?
Well, sadly, I'm going to be selfish one more time, but it's also going to be painful. The Seahawks last year, they got. You could see the path they were on, and some of the players they were bringing in, and there's always that question of: is this new player, is this young player, or is this player from another team? Is he going to work? Kind of like some of the questions I'm asking with the Cardinals now. They were asking those questions last year, and sadly, the answer was yes. They just killed us in both games against them. Their defensive line was just mean as anything. They have the old defensive coordinator, from the Ravens. This would be his year 2. The Ravens are one of the top defenses and always have been. That's just part of their culture. And it's not like Seattle has a recent history of bad defense. So all these combined, and I have a feeling they're going to be top of A, maybe there-ish, maybe not in front of Houston. Houston's got a really good defense, but I mean, right up in this crowd. And I hate it because I don't like them.
You got to play them.
But, well, yeah, that too. But I have to play lots of teams. I don't hate all of them. Just
that's also fair.
But anyways, I think they're going to be one of the top-rated defenses in the country. I think if they have issues on that team at all, it'll be on the other side of the ball. But time will tell. I'm hoping they have some issues because I don't want to see another Seattle Super Bowl. Thank you very much. But any thoughts on Seattle? Would you change that any at all?
I try not to think about Seattle as some to you. No, I think you're right. I mean, I think they're at the top 10 for sure, maybe even a little higher than that. So I think that makes sense. I think once again they've started to create a very healthy, ongoing defensive group again. So, yeah, hopefully, your division figures out a solution to that. I think I was trying to figure out if I could find a way to convince myself to move one of those D tier teams out of D tier. Based on what we know of them. It's funny that Washington's such a good team overall that it was like, man, is that really right? Like, or can I find a way to justify maybe pushing? And you could, I think. Obviously, here they're listed kind of first in that D tier. You could probably make a quick argument. Oh yeah, they should be at the end of C tier or something like that. But I don't know. Is there a team there that you feel like, nah, that's unjust and they should be up further, or you think that those are all like, no, that's right where they belong?
So trying to make a case for each one of them, right?
Yeah.
Washington's, for example, is tough because I don't feel like they added anything spectacular on defense. They really tried to solidify their offense this offseason in the moves that I'm really thinking. I mean, they drafted some guys and all that, but I try not to put that much pressure on rookies. So same goes for Atlanta, just by the way. So I don't think I could take Washington out of here. And also, if their offense ends up scoring regularly, they're going to give up a lot of gimme points, and it's going to make them look worse. It could get them a decent number of sacks, but a lot of points given up. Because if you're always in passing downs, kind of deal with your opposing team. And anyway, but Atlanta didn't have much defense last year, and they again went the rookie route to try to fix it. So I need to see it to believe it. The Bengals, they weren't a good defense last year with Trey Hendrickson, who was relatively happy at the time. Now they've got an unhappy Trey Hendrickson, and let's assume that he does finally get paid. He's clearly not happy with them. And then they're like, oh, let's add Shamar Stewart, who looks like the biggest project in the entire draft. And then they ticked him off just for good measure. So I don't know what they've done outside of adding the defensive coordinator from Notre Dame, I believe it is. I don't know what they've done to really make things substantially better. The Giants, I think I could move out. We've talked about the Giants some. I think I could move them out of here if for no other reason than their defensive line in particular is quite something on paper. And I think we talked about it actually earlier this week, where if their secondary can just be average, their defense could actually stand quite tall. That's a big question. It has caused a problem for some other teams. Seattle, who I was just mentioning, has a great defensive line, but they also have like Devin Witherspoon back there in the secondary. So can they have an okay secondary? If they can, I could move them up into like B tier or top of C anyway. You need their offense not to put them in a bad position all the time again. Again, this sounds a lot like Seattle, but they're the only one I think I could really move out of there.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I like you were saying, I think that they will need the offense to balance them for sure. For that to happen. For sure. Yeah. Okay. If you were going to try to say, here is, so you've got the Eagles, the Broncos, Baltimore, Steelers. I assume we're both comfortable with those as the premier top four. If you were to try to force one of the next tier up into S tier, who would you be tempted to throw into that group?
Well, off the top of my head, it's weird. The Browns have the personnel for it with Myles Garrett, Mason Graham. They just added this year. They still have Denzel Ward in the back. They have the personnel for it, but again, they're going to be put in a position to lose. Because of their offense. I'm starting to have a pattern here. The Seahawks, the Browns, the Giants. They've got a lot of the right things, so they can be up there. But you kind of need a well-rounded team to really get to see how good your defense really is. I think, unless you've got a historic defense that can absolutely really carry your team. I don't know that it's quite that good as a whole, as great as Myles Garrett is. But outside of that, I think the Bills may be slightly overrated. Houston is probably a team that I would pick.
It'd be hard not to.
Yeah, the Jets in the right light maybe, but I'd have them more like battling for sixth. I'd probably pick Houston, I guess. Now that I think about it, between Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson, and Stingley in the back. They really, and it's not like it's those three guys and then a bunch of scrubs. Like they have a solid team around them as well. So, I guess I'd pick Houston. Who would you pick for that particular exercise?
I really want to pick the Jets defense. Actually, I think that they do a good job of limiting offenses in many regards. But like you said, I think they're similarly. They just keep getting put in bad situations. But yeah, and so with that, I think you have to. I would have to default back to Houston. The Vikings, I think, do really well overall, and they're in a tough division to make all that work with. But at the same time, I think they give up a ton of passing yards, which scares me into moving them up any further. And then Browns, as you already pointed out, is the same. And Kansas City's always there in that top group, but yeah, I mean, I would have to default or agree with you that it's got to end up being Houston. As if you were, if we were betting people, I would probably bet on Houston being the fifth, but I really would want to shove the Jets into that if I could. So I would say they're right behind them in my mind.
I got you. Well, let me ask you. Let's kind of flip this a little bit. Okay. Those 4 S tier teams. Give me the one that's the most likely to not actually be there this year. Kind of make the case for some of them. Baltimore, during like the first, I can't remember. I get it backwards sometimes. It's like the first 7 games or something like that. They were the worst secondary in the NFL. They had allowed the most yards through 7 games of any team, and then they allowed the least yards for the remainder of the season. So they just flipped the script during the year. Denver has a lot of great pieces. I have a hard time making a case against them.
Yeah.
But the Steelers, DJ's getting a little older. Yeah. And Cam Hayward is already a bit older. Like he's past a little bit older. And then Philadelphia loses Milton Williams. They lose Josh Sweat. Did they lose Darius Slay? I have to look. It's hard to be that good every single year, and sometimes you take a step back. After they lost, the Super Bowl a few years ago, their defense kind of took a step back the following year. Could something like that happen to them? If you had to make the case for one of these teams to maybe drop out of S, maybe not down to D or anything, but like even just to A tier,
just go down a bit.
Which one would you pick the top 4 teams?
Well, there's internal factors and there's external factors that I would think of. I expect Baltimore to be there. Let's just take 2 out now. I expect Baltimore to be here. I expect Denver to be here. I don't see any reason. I felt like Denver's defense was under some duress last year, and they still were like, yeah, we've got this. Yeah. So looking at Philly, I think one of the things that helped Philly be this good, and maybe this is selfish, but is that Dallas, we played Cooper Rush against them both times. Like, and there's other teams and all of that. They had plenty of competition, and they did a great job. I think they only had 30 points scored on them once during the season. So they're going to be good. But I think having to face Dallas healthy, we're making a strong assumption here that Dallas will be healthy. But if Dallas is healthy, I think that will potentially provide them some more challenge. Like who's challenging them? It's not the Giants. To score points on them and challenge them in that division a bit. So I think from an external factor, I could see Philadelphia potentially having a more difficult time with a potentially better Washington and Dallas. Yeah. With the Steelers, they have a bit of offensive dice rolling going on that they're doing, where I think we know what their defense is, but similarly, defenses get put too much to the test if their offense keeps putting them in bad positions. And does that, would that potentially push them down a little bit in this? Again, I don't see either one of them, like going to your point, I don't see either one of these like, hey, we're sitting here next year talking about how they're a C tier team or something. I just think that those are the 2 most likely, and it would be those factors that I would see playing the biggest role. So if I had to pick one, it would be the Steelers probably. I'm less certain of how their offensive side of the ball is going to work. Yeah. And so how does that how many times does the defense get put in a bad position versus how Philly is going to have more competition? I would say the Steelers are the more likely to drop. If I all that to say, the Steelers are more likely to drop. I think. Okay. Yeah, what about you? What would you pick? Yeah.
Probably the same. I think I'd pick the same. We've touched on the Eagles already when we talked
Yeah.
about the East, and it was just like I trust their talent development and assessment process.
Yeah.
They've done a consistent job. I mean, even when they dropped down a bit in 2023, when they were only 11-6, they were still quite good. This was not a bad team. It just wasn't as dominant as the year before. So, and I think they had injuries in the second half of the year that kind of played a part in their demise at the end of the season. And so, yeah, I can't quite root against them just yet. I'd need to see something happen there. So yeah, I'd pick Pittsburgh. And again, it wouldn't be a massive drop. Well, they're going to be down there with the Falcons or something. Just more pretty darn good kind of stage. So okay. Well, here's my last one for you. Or not my last one, but here's my next one or whatever. It's give me a team that jumps out to you that is most likely to try to make a trade before the trade deadline, I'll just say, for a player to try to make their defense make a jump or stabilize or something like that. The Ravens traded for Jair Alexander in the offseason fairly recently. I could see that actually bringing Green Bay down ever so slightly, and I think it solidifies the Ravens spot up top. But like, is there a team, Detroit and Trey Hendrickson or something like that seems actually likely to you when you think about it?
That seems likely?
Or I don't know, most likely of the unlikely. Yeah.
I was like, I don't know that I deal in likely much. I like to do more the crazy ideas, but
do that too.
Which, to be fair, it's the training Dallas gives its fans is we deal in crazy. I don't know who's going to be looking for help there. I'll steal one from you here. We talk regularly about how I could see Arizona, if they're in a competitive position, I could see them going after a more consistent pass rusher. You know what I mean? Like somebody who's more high end, who's going to be more productive on that side. So I don't know. To me, that's made sense before. I could still see them being in that boat, kind of going into this year. Now, well, boy, we fantasized about all sorts of elite to like, hey, these are just good, strong pass rushers. So assuming that y'all don't have significant development, on your interior pass rush in particular, I could see that somewhere in there. Does that seem crazy to you, or does that seem fairly reasonable?
No, I get that. And a lot of Cardinals fans have kind of fantasized about that idea all offseason. Oh, Trey Hendrickson, maybe we get, especially for a team that was very lacking in pass rush. Our leading sack guy last year, or leader in sacks from last season, had 5.5 sacks. Okay.
Yeah.
Painful to think about. Buda Baker was one of our best pass rushers. So, yes, that thought has crossed my mind. But I do think that Jonathan Gannon and Nick Rallis come from a system of pass rush by committee. The 2022 season got him the head coaching job where they had 70 sacks in Philadelphia. I think the guy that had the most had either 14 or 17. I think it was Hassan Reddick. But you'd think with you'd have like an 18, 19, 20 guy. But I think 4 guys on their defensive line had 10 plus sacks that season. So it's very much, it's a committee. We want to hit you from every direction so that you can't just triple team Aaron Donald and everything's fine. And I think that might be their path here. I'm not opposed to it. I'm not telling you you're wrong because I don't want it to happen. If you guys do decide to move off Micah Parsons, he'd look good in red. He'd probably hate his life, but he'd look good in red. He'd hate his life with a lot of money in his pocket. So that's fair. So I don't know that as much as I'd love to make this about the Cardinals, I don't see them as the leading candidate of these non-candidates. But
who do you think is the leading candidate?
Yeah. So for trade 2, the one that jumps out at me is Tampa. I don't know why. I think Tampa they just kind of make sense. They actually added Hassan Reddick in the offseason. It's kind of an under-the-radar move because after the weird trade, but you didn't give me a deal that happened with the Jets, he kind of went away. He just faded very much so. So I think that'll help them some. And he's played with that coach before back in in Arizona, oddly enough. But it's been a minute, and he's a little bit older player now. I could see them getting out to a fairly good start where they're like 3-2 or 4-3 or something like that, and thinking, man, our defense just isn't quite doing its part here. Maybe we can augment it just a little bit, and that'll set us apart from the rest of the division. Because, you know, at 4-3, Atlanta's probably on their heels. Carolina, if they're taking a step up, might be just a game behind them or so. And so, like, they're going to want to separate themselves. And that ownership group, especially during the Tom Brady era, showed a willingness to go out and spend on big not just free agencies, but, you know, potentially adding to the team in not just draft and development kind of way. So I'd pick Tampa, I guess. And don't ask me who they're going to trade for. Could be anybody. Just look at a struggling team.
Just look at a struggling team. Well, and, you know, what we were talking there, I was thinking who might they, you know, who do we think might be out there? Like, there's the big names. We always talk about those, like, is Myles Garrett finally fed up or whatever, right? Or one of the older kind of guys. But, you know, like the Trayvon Walker out of Miami or Jacksonville, sorry, or Will McDonald out of the Jets. I wonder about those, like that type of guy where they're second, third year kind of guys. If those teams are struggling and they're going to try to get some draft capital, how does that, you know, how might that work out down the road? I think those would be really valuable pieces to be floating around. I'm already like, well, those would be a lot of fun, and Dallas as well. But the problem is, if they're going to end up in Dallas, that's only going to happen if Micah Parsons isn't there. So, not that I'm rooting for that, because I'm not. I want that situation to get resolved like everyone else in the world, but still.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to come up with names. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is the one that comes to mind out of New York. They almost have an oversaturated pass rusher group in certain ways. So I don't think there's any such thing in reality, but you're also looking at
it's a good problem to have.
You're going to have to pay all these guys. That's a lot of money. So they might need to start looking at going young. And if they could trade like Kayvon Thibodeau, let's say, who's going into his fourth season, and get some draft capital for him and return that so that they can try to go young at other positions or at that position, that might be a way to go. I've heard his name get thrown out there somewhere. So,
which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. But we'll see. But yeah, I'm excited for it. But, well, unless you got anything else, let's draw this one kind of to a close.
Yeah, I think so. I think that this has been a good one. It's a tough one to move around because there's a lot of question marks out there.
So much just projection. So, but yeah. So, okay. Well, that'll wrap up our AI defense tier list kind of examination. We moved a couple of teams because I had to move the Cardinals because I'm selfish like that. But we moved a couple, and we projected some maybe moves for others, but we didn't actually move them. So if you're just looking at screenshots, you're probably not going to get the real general gist of what was going on here. But thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you. We're trying to get to 100 subscribers by the start of the 2025 NFL season, and we want to thank everyone who's already subscribed and who's joined us repeatedly. And so we hope you'll join us again. And hope you're excited for a good season, just like we are. So until we see you the next time, have a fantastic day.